I'd like to introduce Hoodie Pony, all the way from Melbourne. I have to say this right. Hold on. Melbourne, Australia. He's from DEF CON Group 11613, and he will be presenting what is my what? Or sorry, let me say this correctly. What is my life that fragile? The increased dependency on the digital life to participate in society means digital life is real life. With that, the consequences of failure in confidentiality, integrity, and availability of our digital self can have dire consequences. So I threat modeled living in 2024, and it's more fragile than I thought. How digitally resilient do you think you are? Let's talk about that and do some things we can and talk about some things we can do about it. Hoodie Pony is just a friendly local cybersecurity Sherpa helping people verifiably build a safer, secure, and more resilient world by sharing knowledge through telling stories. This includes the privilege of presenting here at DEF CON Group's VR community event previously and a keynote at, I don't know what that one is, CHCon New Zealand. Oh, okay, CHCon New Zealand, amongst many other conferences. Hoodie Pony is grounded by the many years of experience spent security advising and assessing critical infrastructure in Australia and governments to small startups. That said, Hoodie Pony is just another nerd figuring out how things work, tinkering and challenging assumptions, sharing a story so we can all make better informed decisions through broader perspectives. And with that, I'd introduce him, but apparently he's disappeared off the planet. Let me check real quick and see where he went.
I'm here. Is the network having issues? Am I having the same issue as
I can see you.
Hello?
Is he here, or am I just not seeing him?
I'm here. Hello?
Yeah.
Hello?
He's
Hello? Am I having the same issue as Alan? Is this an Australia problem?
He's still there on YouTube.
I don't think so. I can see you.
See me or Hoodie Pony?
Both of you. You're both right there.
Hoodie, I see.
Oh, okay. Well, in that case, I'll get off the stage and let you proceed.
So before I start, y'all can see me, right? It's not that Australia has just disappeared off the map, right? Yes? Am I coming
fly
through?
mode.
You're all good.
I'm good?
You're good.
Cool. Australia did not disappear yet. Cool. Okay. Let me get started. Why am I hearing myself?
Hey, Hoodie, we can't hear you if you're trying to talk.
Huh?
I can hear Hoodie.
You can? Oh, crap. Okay.
We can see you now, but earlier you were only on YouTube.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Are we having an Australia problem again?
Yeah, essentially, yeah.
Okay.
I think just flow with it. We'll watch on YouTube. I think that's the best option.
Okay. Cool. Alrighty.
Well, I can see you again.
Your talk is making its point already.
Yeah, I know, right? Good day, all. Like for many here, Corey's talk on enshittification last year resonated with me. As I see my life, my daily life, increasingly dependent on yet another digital service, something felt real uneasy to me. Then, it hit one day. While I was doing some prioritization work with a risk register. Risk, very high. Impact, potential death of multiple people. Likelihood, moderate. Well, we've seen about a handful of these happen in the last year or so. But we've already kind of externalized the liability of that risk. So based on our risk appetite policy, we accept the risk. Whoa, hold up. Potential death of multiple people? Say what? If we talk in video game terms, I, as a human, I'm playing a single attempt zero death run, Whereas I was writing a risk register for an organization where response with minor penalties were available. Choices we make and the consequences of who and what you depend on is remarkably different. It's potentially a matter of survival. That disconnect, hey? Risk accepted carries a very different meaning now, doesn't it? Especially if your own life is the one that's on the line. What can we do about it? Like any security professional, we can assess the risk and maybe make a plan to manage it. To make a plan, and a sensible thing to do is to first understand the operational landscape and the influencing factors to help us decide how we should act. Since it's not Since it's not practical to fully consider all possibilities, we do this through using a threat model to help develop our understanding. It feels like an Australia thing, hey? So, what scenario are we threat modeling? An effective way to understand dependency is to, well, turn the whole system off and see what it impacts. So, well, what happens when a whole country, say Australia, suddenly disconnects from the greater internet? The irony of the statement. Well, the recent CrowdStrike incident gave us a canary into the consequences, but what we can do is a threat model, since doing it practically will be, well, quite devastating. I'm in Australia, and fortunately for this threat model, we're an island. And the likelihood that an incident that would disconnect us from the internet isn't that far-fetched. There are only 15 cables that connect us to the outside world, and they all pass through earthquake fault lines and contentious waters. Well, also noting that, yeah, there's supposed to be incidents happening in the earthquake situation. So maybe that's affecting us right now. I don't know. I'm in Australia. We're an island. It's a concern. It's an issue that has happened in our neighborhood more than a few times in the last few years. Heck, there's even an article just a few weeks old about that concern. So using NIST SB 830 as guidance, that means likelihood of a disconnection situation as moderate, maybe more given the connectivity issues I'm having right now. Well, it's an honest threat evaluation so that we can make informed decisions and prepare for it. Let's not even start with the complexities of staying legally compliant. Local laws and regulations are challenging enough. International law? Oh, that's a whole different level, especially if they conflict with local laws, and I'm not a lawyer. Let's put all of that aside for now and keep the disconnection physical, or as I layer one. Am I coming through? I can see somebody talking. Is this working?
Yes, you're working just fine.
Cool. Okay. Um, continuing. Thank you. Now that we have our scenario, we we know we can't quite model every single service and dependency. That'd be unrealistic, and we'll be here far too long, and it's already getting late. So let's begin a sample to threat model. Email. Why email? It's a well-known public standard, a well-known commodity that everyone kind of depends on, right? Its parts are comparatively more transparent than services like, say, I don't know, payments, energy infrastructure, which are significantly more regulated and complex than we need for our example here. Our email address serves as a proxy of our identity. It acts as our main formal communications channel online. It is the anchor of our digital identity, including with government agencies like ID.me in the US and MyGov and the tax office here in Australia. It also serves as legal records for our purchases, agreements, receipts, communications, etc., etc. And the last contract you signed, purchase, job, etc., there's a high likelihood it was delivered to you via email. Without our email addresses, we are effectively dead in this digital first environment. So, that seems rather important, eh? So I'd say, good place to start. Yeah. So, email. Simple, right? For many, our interaction with email is via an email provider which handles it all for us, including the client interface we interact with and the sending of that email, like iCloud Mail, Microsoft Outlook, Google's Gmail, maybe Proton Mail for the privacy conscious. How many of us here have looked at how email actually works? For people like my parents, email's just that magical service that I get mail in. But email's made of more than that. There's a bunch of standards and dependencies that make email work. So, what makes up email? Well, here's a list of RFCs that are related. There's a lot we can dig into, but let's just focus on some of the dependencies rather than digging deep into the protocol descriptions and how it handshakes and works. So, what are some of these dependencies for an email to be sent from, say, one address to another, from one .au address to another? So, we look at the domain name. That's how we know which IP address to connect to, right? Then we look at IP and IP routing. That's how local ISPs find their way and move the email packets around and do that whole delivery thing. And there's the digital certificates. The TLS and modern email security depends heavily on this for encryption and authentication. Then there's email software, your mail delivery agents, routing email from your machine to your local inbox, mail user agents, your actual interface that you interface with your email, your mail transfer agent, the software that actually sends email between computers. And, well, there's the operating system that it runs on. But let's not open that Pandora's box. And yeah, that's another rabbit hole. With that quick refresh on how email works, let's do a quick trend model of email. One quick reminder. Well, the scenario is that Australia gets fully disconnected from the global internet. So let's talk about some common email as a service providers. We'll ask 3 simple questions. Are the email servers with my data local in Australia? Will we be able to access and download our email from within Australia? And will we be able to send and receive email to other local TLDs, such as, a .au to .au? We'll take a look at 4 providers: Microsoft Outlook, Gmail, Proton, and Fastmail. So let's start with Microsoft Outlook. Well, Microsoft Outlook, it has data residency options for their enterprise accounts. It mentions storage of data at rest of Exchange Online mailbox content, but I couldn't really find anything much about personal Outlook or Microsoft accounts besides this small little snippet in the privacy policy. quick question. When you select a data residency region in Australia, Australia, raise your hand if you know for certain if you'd be able to log in and access your email. If, say, I don't know, US Central went offline. I'm not so sure. Well, there's DNS, which is reliant on the .com TLD route, but that might be cached, so maybe? Then there's this. Well, as you can see from this, the ability to access is down. So despite having the data physically near in Australia, we have no way to access it because the gates are down. This is for Azure, but it does raise the question. Since we can't access the service, sending and receive email is also questionable. So moving on then, Gmail or Google Workspace, whichever flavor. It has data regions for Workspace Enterprise, but it's only US and Europe. So it doesn't quite help our scenario. It covers data address and processing. I couldn't find anything much about personal Gmail accounts. So, well, if we go on and take a look at this, from an outage in 2020, it affected even the EU. So I'm guessing we in Australia won't be able to log in. We also see that sending and receiving emails to be a problem, as this tweet from Proton shows. So, speaking of Proton, well, it's proudly based in Switzerland, including their infrastructure. So that's a clear no to all three questions. If we can't reach it, there's little we can do, right? Now, okay, Fastmail. Oh, this is hopeful, right? It's an Australian company. Well, sadly, the infrastructure is based out of New Jersey and Seattle. So I'd say no to all three questions here too. If we can't reach it, the cables are cut. Well, that's pretty much it, eh? Here's a quick review of what we've learned. Only Microsoft came close, but that's for the enterprise accounts. And even that's uncertain. To be clear, these aren't criticisms of the service or the resilience engineering that all the services have put into their product. They'll have their place and do great work. But it is good to know how our dependencies may be impacted in a full disconnection situation, right? That's our threat model. That's our threat scenario right now. All right. Can we even run these ourselves with, say, free open source software if we wanted to? Okay, let's walk through the dependencies. Remember these from earlier? Let's start with the domain name. To keep things simple, we'll keep it to the .au/TLD. The AU root servers point to an IP address owned by the AU Domain Administration Registrar in Australia, and is directly paired with multiple ISPs. These servers are run by Identity Digital Australia with local staff and infrastructure. And following that verification journey, let's check if these servers are actually local. So we do a little dig trace on the .au domain, and we have the INA root servers. Not in Australia, but zones files for the .au TLD can be downloaded, and recursive DNS resolvers would likely have these bootstrapped. And these are well-known TLDs. These are well-known TLD roots on INA. from the IP addresses, we can see that one is on the AUDA ASN, and the rest are Aflia's AS. If we ping this, we see a response with about 30 millisecond TTL, which means it's local. Looking at the peering here, that makes sense as they are directly paired with local ISPs. It looks like the .au DNS will keep working. We know local ISP peering is pretty solid, as Australia's remoteness means it's very costly for us to route traffic internationally. You know, us being an island and all that. Okay, so moving on to digital certs. Well, this is where it gets a bit dicey. Looking up the common CADB that the Linux Foundation maintains, and it's kind of used as an authoritative source of root certs, we find no Australian CAs except for one maintained by the Australian Department of Defense. Oh, well, crap. So that means either the DoD issues certs, or we're pretty much stuck with whatever time we have remaining on our existing TLS certs. That's a maximum of 90 days for Let's Encrypt certificates. So that means we'll have to either create a new CA and issue it to everyone, or turn off the PKI stuff if we get disconnected from the global network. Well, okay. As for email software, ARNet, Australia's research network and ISP, maintains Mirror of various Linux distributions, including its source code. All the servers are local. So at the risk of following another rabbit hole of dependencies, let's just say we're good on that front. If you're keeping score, looks like IPDNS and email software, we can keep working. We can keep working. However, we have a capability gap in issuing valid digital certs that already have their root CAs on our devices. Yikes. That means if we are disconnected, we'll lose email, some instantly, others as certificates start to expire, since so much of modern email relies on these certificates. Plus, we don't have any local capacity to switch to something even if we wanted to, because we don't have a local root CA. If we tried, how long would we take? That's just the technical reality of our dependency, without even considering the influences of business priorities, local legal, regulatory, and cultural expectations of where these service providers are based. Oops. Yeah, I should probably have done that. So, what can go wrong? Let's talk about some of the consequences. Imagine what life would be if you lost access to your mailbox. Finally, that inbox zero. No notifications. Paradise. I wish. We saw how badly the CrowdStrike incident impacted us. It impacted food, fuel, transport, healthcare, critical systems' ability to communicate, and even the ability to access our money. That impacted our ability to live our lives. Fortunately, this impact didn't last long. And through all the incredible efforts, got things back running in just a few hours, a few days. So let us take a step back and ask, what in our lives depends on us having access to our email? I mentioned a few of this earlier. That's how we communicate. It's how we communicate with our government, banks, telcos, healthcare, landlord, city council, and every aspect of our lives, including being notified of bills and other legal obligations. It serves as a proxy of our identity. It is used as login to our government IDs like ID.me and MyGov in Australia. Well, we agree to transactions via email. Like how frequently do you still sign and post paper contracts or get confirmation on paper? It is used as login to your banks, PayPal, etc., where you may be sent an email with a confirmation code as you log in, or even how we send money to each other. How long will you be able to survive without access to your current email? If the CrowdStrike incident was bad, what if you woke up with access to our email provider gone? Well, one dad found out after sending pictures of their kid to a doctor for diagnosis. How will you and the ones you love do? Would it be fair to say that loss of email would be a catastrophic consequence? And that's just email. Holy crap. Personally, I didn't know my life was that fragile. So let's do something about it. We can. What we learned from the threat model and scenario is that there is a lot of risk. And we need to make sure that we truly understand these digital systems have very real impact on our lives. Well, that's the usual advice for this. Have backups, have an emergency plan, redundancy in your dependencies. However, as we saw earlier, do we even have the ability to do so? Well, there's only so much we can do individually, as we've seen from the threat model. But now that we know the gaps that we need to fill, we must engage collectively to build a less fragile future for ourselves. Well, it's a team this year. It's hard, but if we don't do it, what future is there for us? So, hackers, let's save this world together. For us to have resilience, we must first have a healthy diversity of providers and approaches necessary for a healthy population. We can learn from nature. Diverse and locally adapted ecosystems thrive and are resilient. Maybe here are some ideas for what I think each of us should do. Try to model our own lives, choose better, demand better, and build better. Strengthen the commons. Public money is public code, right? So, number one, threat model your own life and make a plan you can live with. Ask yourself, what do I depend upon? What happens if I no longer have access to it? Or the service becomes hostile? We've seen that happen recently. What can I do? And how can I change my own behavior to minimize the impact it has on me? Well, in this case, as an example, we're talking about email. That is screwed. We don't have to rehash this. And maybe use my own domain and have a backup local service provider. 2. Choose better, demand better, and build better. Demand real choice. Demand diversity. Demand and build for interoperability. As the market moves, so will providers to fill the demand. Preferably, choose providers that do, both in our jobs and in our personal life. That means make data portability, interoperability, and support for open standards a requirement when choosing. Don't make yourself a hostage. That's why the EU is pushing for digital sovereignty, so that it has the ability to act independently in the digital world. In practice, this doesn't need to be a big bang transition, everything all or nothing. Just a bit more diversity. Just add a bit more diversity to your supply chain as you go. If you're no longer solely dependent, you're no longer at the whims of the service provider, like Darth Vader did. I have altered the deal. Pray I don't alter it further. Well, Big Tech knows that. That's why they came together to create the Open Compute project. As a bonus, competition gives you a stronger negotiating position and reduces cost. 3. Strengthen the commons. Public money, public code. Engage and demand that the various levels of government use their buying power to strongly prefer public code. We've seen this used to drive better standards, competition, and resilience throughout the years. We've seen this multiplying effect with, say, the Linux Foundation, CISA, NIST, NASA, and more. Switzerland's doing it. A strong commons enables us to not worry about if the provider is going to rug pull a feature that we rely on. In cybersecurity, we often say trust but verify. Public code allows us to do just that because, well, mistakes happen. It also enables us to keep the government and its implementers accountable as more gets digitized. As a benefit, public code helps create local capability. When knowledge and capability is publicly available, we enable local providers to grow, thus minimizing the impact of external powers have on our survival and democracy. It's only fair that if taxpayers are paying for it, the tax-paying community should benefit, right? Securing a supply chain and reversing this digital fragility is a matter of survival. It is about our freedom to choose and act independently. Our digital life is real life. Well, it's not going to be easy. There are large forces against us. But as John F. Kennedy said about the moonshot, we choose to go to the moon in this decade and do other things not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. This is our moonshot. Are we willing to accept the challenge and fight to win? Or will we let this fragility shatter our life's efforts and our future? One small step at a time, we will reclaim our resilient future. What will you do? Thank you. That's a wrap. Okay,